This is part 3 of the Indominus Rex versus the Indoraptor. So make sure to watch the first 2 previous parts of this fanfiction I have created as a Halloween special. Chapter 5: The Untamable Queen's Return. It's been about 6 months since Eli checked out the progress Dr. Wu and his team have made on the creation of the Indominus Rex and the Indoraptor. Dr. Wu could not wait to tell Eli of the massive amounts of progress that he has made on the projects. He called Eli to tell him to go to the lab to show him this amazing progress that he has made. It takes a couple of minutes, but Eli finally arrives to the secret lab, looking excited, confused, and irritated. Eli walks over to Wu and asks, "So it is so important that you had to pull me out of my work for this time, Wu?" Wu responds with, "I think you will be very pleased with the progress I have made. Follow me." Dr. Wu leads Eli over to an incubator with 2 eggs inside. Eli asks Wu, "Are those," Wu interrupts saying, "Indoraptor eggs?" "Yes. Yes, they are." Eli asks Wu how long it will be until they hatch, and Wu tells him that should only be a couple of weeks from now. Eli asks Wu about the Indominus Rex project. Wu looks at Eli and gives a smirk, saying, "I'm very glad you asked about that." He takes Eli over to the monitor, showing a medium-sized empty paddock. Eli asks Wu, "So what does this have to do with the Indominus?" Dr. Wu tells him to wait for a couple of seconds. Just as he says that, the Indominus Rex reveals itself from its camouflage. Eli has a surprised look on his face, but Wu knows that Eli is very impressed with this ability. Eli asks Wu how long it will be before the Indominus is fully matured. Wu tells him that it should take about 3 years for the Indominus to fully mature, but it seems to be experiencing much more of a rapid growth than the previous Indominus Rex siblings. Eli asks Wu, "You mentioned that there were 2 Indominus siblings, but only one destroyed Jurassic World. Where was the other one during all of those events?" Wu tells him that the Indominus is very aggressive and does not have any pack instinct, so it killed the sibling, which is also why Wu never created a second Indominus for Mills. Mills asks Wu if the Indoraptor will have the same problem as the Indominus Rex. Wu answers with, "It's a 50-50 chance because we heighten the aggressive nature of the Indoraptors, so we will only know until the Indoraptors are born if they can work together in a pack." Eli asks Wu about the potential of the Indoraptor being able to follow commands, just like how Owen Grady trained the Raptors. Wu responds with, "At this moment in time, that would be highly unlikely. They have higher aggression than the Velociraptors, and the only way for them to follow commands would be using their own lust to kill. Another way would be making the next generation of Indoraptors with the DNA used from a Velociraptor that was still alive on Isla Nublar." Eli tells Wu about his plan to capture the dinosaurs on Isla Nublar and taking them back to the mainland, and how he is already assembling a team of mercenaries and hunters to go to the island. Wu is pleased with the idea because this means more access to different genetic material, which could allow for more hybridizations to create the perfectly genetically engineered animal. Dr. Wu tells Eli that the capture of the Velociraptor on that island would greatly benefit the Raptor project. Eli is very excited by Wu's response to capture the dinosaurs on Isla Nublar. He leaves Dr. Wu's lab to go back to his office. He leans on the others to go back to his office. Dr. Wu looks back at the incubator with the 2 Indoraptor eggs and walks over to them. He leans on the side of the incubator and looks closer at the eggs. He smiles because he knows that Eli's plan will help improve this already brilliant creation. Chapter 6: Untamable Thieves. Dr. Wu was observing the Indominus as it did its daily perimeter around the pen to look for weaknesses, but she will find no weaknesses in her pen. Eli Mills put a lot of money into the creation of this creature, does not want it to escape and potentially be killed, and him to be sued for the damages and deaths that she could cause. The Indominus was almost at its full expected size, and just as Wu had predicted, the Indominus was growing at a faster rate than the first generation of Indominus Rex. Wu looked on at his creation with a smile on his face. He thought back to the idea of this being made by his top staff members. They were very smart. In comparison to his genius, they were nothing but lab monkeys. Wu spat at the idea of having the Indominus made by his staff. He made the creature and should be informed that an attempt to remake the creature. Wu's thought was interrupted by a scientist charging into his office, exclaiming, "Dr. Wu, the Indoraptor siblings are starting to hatch." Wu jumped up from his chair and walked quickly over to the Indoraptor's incubator. The head of one Indoraptor was already out of its shell, while the other just got its nose broken free. The Indoraptor that had its head free from the shell pulled its arm out of the egg and used its clawed hand to break apart more of the shell. After a couple of minutes, the Indoraptor was fully hatched from its shell. Wu noticed its dark coloration and the golden stripe along the side of its body. Its sibling, who just manages to get its upper body out of the shell, seemed to have white colorations and a blue stripe running along the side of the body. The black Indoraptor stumbled over its sibling and tore apart the shell, ripping the sibling out. This reminded Wu of the Indominus' birth, but hopefully with the added raptor genes, these two will create a pack relationship. The two siblings stared at each other in interest, but it seemed like they were already trying to display dominance over one another. The black Indoraptor snapped its jaws at the white Indoraptor, forcing it to be in a bowing position to the black Indoraptor. Dr. Wu was pleased with the hatching of the Indoraptors and went back to his office to call Eli Mills about its achievement. Wu dialed Mills' number only to be met by the humming of being on hold. Finally, the phone said to leave a message after the tone. Wu just ended the call because he knew that if anyone outside of the lab were to find out about this project, the government would come crashing in to end it all. Wu spent months working on both animals. He was not going to risk his work being taken away from him. He walked back over to the crowd of scientists hovering over the baby Indoraptors. Wu told them all to get back to work and for someone to run some biometric data on the hatchlings. Flashing back to the scientist whose finger was bitten off, Dr. Wu strictly told the scientist to be very careful because if they are injured, they will not be covered for their injuries. The two scientists nodded nervously as they slowly approached the Indoraptors. Wu could hear one of them hiss and smile as he walked back to his office. His phone started to ring, and he answered the phone cautiously, saying, "Hello, who is this?" Eli responds, "John Hammond. Who do you think is calling you? What was so urgent that you had to call me in the middle of a meeting for?" Dr. Wu responded, "They've hatched." Eli responded in a shocked voice, saying, "Really? It'll be over in about an hour or two." Wu responded, "Okay, I will have them ready for your arrival." Wu hangs up the phone, very pleased with Mills' reaction. He sat down at his desk and began working on the next generation of Indoraptor. Mills arrived 2 hours later into Dr. Wu's office, exclaiming, "Okay, Wu, where are these little money makers?" Dr. Wu slowly rose from his desk, telling Mills to follow him. They arrived at the nursery, where the two Indoraptors were sparring against each other. Eli Mills gasped in astonishment, saying, "Dr. Wu, you son of a bitch, you actually did it!" Dr. Wu calmly replied, "Of course I did. Though it will take about a year for them to fully mature, and we will need to get one of the velociraptors off the island so that they can follow commands." They replied, "Wait, these can't follow commands?" We replied, "These are only the first generation. Of course they don't have all the features that you want them to have, but we have begun experimenting with a certain pitch that will make the Indoraptors attack a target of the user's choice." Mills looked pleased with this announcement and said, "Okay, where's that device?" We responded, "We haven't actually made the device yet, but we know that the Indoraptor has the capability. How long will it be to make that device along with getting them to follow orders? Dr. Wu responded, it shouldn't take too long to make the device, but it will take a couple of years to make the Indoraptor follow command. And even longer depending on when you get me that Velociraptor. Eli responded, I know. I'm gathering a bunch of hunters and mercenaries to go to his Lanublar. Dr. Wu glared at Mills, saying, you want the Indoraptor to take orders, you need that Velociraptor here, alive. Eli rolled his eyes, saying, okay, I'll try to put more money into who I hire. Eli left the lab, and Wu just stared at the Indoraptors playing with each other. Finally walked back to his office and to resume working. Chapter 7, The Key to Taming the Untamable. It has been 1 year since the birth of the Indoraptors. Just as Wu theorized, they were full-grown adults. They were much larger than expected, and showed to be very aggressive towards anything, even sometimes themselves. 10 feeders were almost killed within a month alone, and there was only one problem with them. They both showed genetic defects. The black Indoraptor violently twitched for no reason, and the white Indoraptor seemed to be very weak and was always ill and shivering. It was also refusing to eat anything that was given to them. Dr. Wu knew that the white Indoraptor would die soon. She had multiple genetic defects in her muscles, nerves, and had very light bones. The white Indoraptor also showed no response to the sounds tested to show any differences in aggression, while the black Indoraptor grew more aggressive with specific tones. They have already gone through hundreds of different pitches to see which would set off the Indoraptor's aggressive nature on a specific subject. They had a laser and a device that made different combinations of pitches aimed at a dummy in the Indoraptor's cage. Wu watched as the Indoraptors reacted to each of the pitches. Wu started to wonder if there was a flaw in the system that they were using. Just as Wu finished the thought, the black Indoraptor slashed at the dummy, spilling out the cotton and the sand inside. Wu realized that this was the pitch needed to make the Indoraptor attack a target. The problem was that it did not try to attack the dummy as aggressively as it would one of the feeders. Wu realized that the flaw in his experiment was that he needed a living subject for the laser to lock onto. The Indoraptor could sense thermal regulations just like the Indominus, which would mean that it can tell the difference between a living target and a random object. Wu ordered the scientists conducting the tests to come up to the lab so that he could tell them about his new theory. They arrived in the lab waiting for Wu's new orders for them. He explained to the scientists his theory, and they all nodded in agreement. He knew that they knew not to doubt his genius, no matter how insane the theory may be. He told them that he needed a lot of goats, pigs, and cows to test his theory. The scientists parted from Wu once he dismissed them so that they could go complete their tasks. Wu went back to his office to resume his observations of the Indoraptors. Now, this chapter does continue on. I will have to make another part. All this is probably going to be uploaded almost all at once. Yeah, I'm not too sure how I'm going to do this, but with only a 15-minute limit, I can't really tell the story fully, so it has to be broken up in parts. But hopefully I'll figure out how to put up a playlist or something. See you in the next part.